Hey baby, it is season 2, episode 24 of Heavy Theology.
We're getting near the end of season 2.
We are. It's good times.
Absolutely. What are we going to do after that?
Well, after that, we're going to do the Bree mix, which are the season 1 episodes. We're just going to redo those so that we can have them available for YouTube subscribers.
Okay.
And then after that, we're going to move on to season 3. There is no rest for the Stricklers.
I'll be excited to do the Bree mix. There's a lot more I want to say about those, now that I've studied some more and learned some more.
That's some good stuff. It's some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we've gotten better in our podcasting abilities since those episodes, but those episodes still had some really good meat to them, and yeah, it'll be fun.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, last week we talked about artificial intelligence, and if you missed that episode or any of our past episodes, I invite you to check them out. If you like what you see or hear there, please take a moment to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of Heavy Theology.
Heavy Theology.
Heavy Theology. Well, today we're talking about mythical creatures.
Ooh.
Or cryptids for you fancy folks.
For the layperson.
For the layperson, they're mythical creatures. All right, so we're going to be talking about the Jersey Devil, Mothman, and all those creepy guys, and maybe a few that you've never heard of. Yeah.
So I learned this week that mythical, and in all my studies, the Enochian story and the story of Adam and Eve and all that are all referred to in academia as myths. Mm-hmm. And of course, I truly believe the Bible is inerrant and infallible, and therefore these people actually lived and these events actually happened. Myth does not mean that it's untrue. Myth means in academia and in its ideology, foundational story.
Wow.
So these creatures, even though they're referred to as mythical, doesn't mean that they did not exist.
Sure.
It means they're foundational to a particular culture or story in a particular area.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
See how learned I am?
I'm telling you what, he's been doing his own PJ search over there.
There you go.
All right, well, do you believe in Bigfoot?
I do not.
Nor do I. Do you believe in unicorns?
I definitely do not.
Well, did you know that some people think that unicorns are actually mentioned in the Bible? In fact, it's said that unicorns are mentioned 9 times in Numbers, Job, and Psalms. Yeah, what do you think about that?
I don't think that's probably true.
Well, this one actually is a myth, not quite in the way that you just described myth, but more of a biblical translation error. And the original Hebrew used the word Ram. Now biblical scholars believe that Ram actually meant aurochs, a massive and very aggressive and now thankfully extinct wild ox that had 2 long horns. And when the Hebrew texts were translated into the Greek Septuagint, scholars used the word monokeros in the translation. Mono meaning one and keros meaning horn, monokeros, which later became unicorn in English. But what about some modern day creatures that people just like you and me, possibly even some of our listeners and viewers, believe they may have seen?
I am anxious to hear what you have come up with in your research, Ms. Bree.
Well, I did not find unicorns in my research, but I did find some other neat stuff. All right, well, these creatures are called cryptids, and I had never heard that word before my research.
Cryptids.
But first, we'll start off with the Mothman.
Yeah. 7 years in West Virginia. I've heard of that one.
Yeah, if you are from that part of the United States, then you most certainly have heard of Mothman. Mothman originated in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and he was first sighted in 1966. He's described as a man-sized winged creature with glowing red eyes. Now, whenever he's seen, it's considered to be a bad omen. Eyewitnesses report a wave of sightings in 1967, right before a chilling and tragic disaster occurred.
Yeah, and that was a very tragic disaster for sure.
Absolutely. On December 15th, 1967, at around 5 p.m., the Silver Bridge, a suspension bridge spanning the Ohio River connecting Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, was packed. And it was, rightfully so. It was around Christmas time. People were Christmas shopping. It was 5 p.m. It was rush hour traffic. They were heading home. And this bridge was built in 1928. And so it was never built to withstand the massive amount of traffic, for one. It was never meant to withstand the heavy traffic of the big trucks that went across the bridge. Engineers of that time, they couldn't possibly fathom the sheer weight and volume of the massive trucks and the other vehicles that would cross the bridge. Now, standard suspension bridges are built with thick woven steel cables, but the Silver Bridge was not. And instead, it was constructed using an I-bar chain design. And this is a lot like a bicycle chain, only it's on a whole lot bigger, massive scale. And the issue lies in the fact that these types of bridges have a single point of failure. If a single bar cracks or fails, the entire structural integrity of the chain is gone. And that's what happened on December 15, 1967. A microscopic fracture in one of the I-bars gave way, and in less than 20 seconds, the entire bridge twisted, snapped, and collapsed into the very icy, very deep waters of the Ohio River below. 31 autos were plunged into the river, 46 people died, and 9 were severely injured, and it remains one of the worst engineering failures in American history. Now, you may be wondering how the Mothman plays into this. I just explained how the bridge was designed and that it was pretty much doomed to failure under our modern, the way the traffic was going across the bridge, how heavy things were, and the amount of traffic. So it stands to reason that the bridge failed naturally, and nobody's really disputing that. Well, what does come into play with Mothman is that beginning in November of 1966 and for 13 months leading up to the disaster of the Silver Bridge collapse, hundreds of people reported seeing a 7-foot-tall, faceless creature with giant wings and hypnotic red glowing eyes. And they would claim that they saw the creature chasing cars, standing in fields, and hovering around an abandoned World War II explosives manufacturer's bunker. But most chillingly, people claim to have seen the creature perched on the steel framework of the Silver Bridge in the days and weeks leading up to December 15th. What's more, people who saw the Mothman didn't only see the creepy winged creature, they began experiencing some pretty wild poltergeist activity. They got strange phone calls with static and robotic voices that predicted the future, and even visits from what they termed men in black. Now, I've driven through Point Pleasant 100 times. I've crossed the Silver Memorial Bridge, and it's a much sturdier bridge built to take the place of the Silver Bridge. And I can honestly say I've never seen the Mothman, but I will tell you I do look for him every time I pass through there. Here's what's wild. When the bridge collapsed, the sightings pretty much stopped, at least in Point Pleasant, although it believes that Mothman still exists, and he hangs out elsewhere. In fact, investigators have tracked over 170 credible and vetted sightings of him in Chicago from 2011 to today.
Wow.
And many of these come from commercial pilots, airport ground crews, and security personnel around Chicago O'Hare. And one postal worker at an O'Hare sorting facility spotted a 7-foot silhouette in the parking lot. When her car's headlights hit it, its eyes flashed bright red, it let out an intense screech, and it took off directly into the sky. But wait, there's more.
Oh, there's more.
It's said that plant workers began experiencing terrible nightmares and threatening phone calls, and they began seeing a giant winged headless nightmare with red eyes flying over a reactor before the Chernobyl nuclear reactor meltdown in 1986. Now, skeptics believe the sightings could be misidentified crane or a massive owl in the area, or perhaps even collective subconscious omens. This is where people can sense a looming disaster, sort of a collective dread personified. But others believe the Mothman could be a destroying angel, just like in the Bible. Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on Mothman?
Well, we've been to the Mothman Museum several times, the kids and I, and we've crossed that bridge several times, of course. I do think there's something demonic about it. I genuinely do. And I think that's kind of the consensus that the folks in the area came to, is that it was a demon of some kind.
Wow. Well, I think it makes for good tourism. But there's a lot that I don't know. I am a skeptic at heart. I'm distrusting of most things like this, but I feel that there's a reasonable, logical explanation for most everything. So I'm skeptical about this one, but I am open to it actually being something.
There are all kinds of different creatures that were seen in West Virginia. It's kind of a hotbed. It's a demonic stronghold. And so it's not just the Mothman. There's several others that have been seen in and around the West Virginia area. And there was a lot of tragedy that happened there. I don't think it's an angel of destruction like in the Bible. That angel is sent for the sense of judgment. And it doesn't seem to be anything that God is judging or bringing judgment upon these people. It was just a tragic accident. So I seriously don't think it's a biblical proportions kind of thing.
I gotcha. Well, have you ever heard of El Chupacabra?
I've heard of El Chupacabra.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts about El Chupacabra?
I don't know anything other than I've heard of it.
You've heard of it. All right. Well, El Chupacabra, or the goat sucker.
Goat sucker.
Goat
Ooh,
sucker.
Yeah, see, I haven't heard much about this.
Yeah. Well, this one is fairly new. It got its start in 1995 in Puerto Rico, and there are two distinct versions. The original 1995 version, which has a two-legged reptile with spikes down his back and large alien-like eyes, and the U.S. version, which is more of a canine. He looks like a hairless, mangy coyote with some serious genetic issues. Now, I would argue that it probably is a mangy coyote with some serious genetic issues.
Probably so.
But what do I know?
Yeah. I've seen some nasty coyotes affected by mange that look pretty gnarly.
Yeah. We see coyotes all the time here, so it's,
No roadrunners.
No roadrunners.
But coyotes.
Interestingly enough, maybe that's what they're out for. All right, well, what makes this one so scary is that it's infamous for draining the blood of livestock through precise puncture wounds. In fact, it's said to have attacked thousands of livestock.
Wow.
And it's given a lot of credence to the belief that the government is secretly genetically engineering creatures in labs and testing biological warfare in the Caribbean. And believe it or not, Chupacabra have been captured in the U.S. Did you know that?
They've been captured in the U.S.
They have been captured in the U.S. Yes. At least what people reported to be El Chupacabra.
I see.
And they've all been genetically tested, and it was determined that each one, dun dun dun.
It was a coyote with mange?
Pretty much. Yeah. It was either a coyote, a feral dog, or a fox suffering from severe late-stage sarcoptic mange. Now, sarcoptic mange is a horrific disease caused by mites that burrow under the animal's skin, leaving them hairless and covered in scabby, thick gray skin. Now, these animals are incredibly weak and they can't hunt, so they often venture onto farms to target easy pinned-up prey like chickens and goats. So it's not that they're aggressive, they're just hungry and honestly probably a little ticked off that they've got the mange.
Yeah.
So when you corner them, of course they're going to be a bit grouchy. Yeah. What are your thoughts now on Chupacabra?
I think they're coyotes with mange.
They are, yeah, I agree. I believe that they are coyotes with mange, and I'm not behind this one at all. All right. You ready for a couple more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, have you ever heard of the Fresno Nightcrawler?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, this one's pretty recent too, and it was first seen on security camera footage in Fresno, California in 2007. It looks like this one's going to be hard to get through because it's just ridiculous, but okay, here we go. It looks like a pair of walking pants, of white walking pants, just by themselves. They're two stick-like legs that are topped by a tiny round head. No body, no arms, just pants and a head. So most people at the time thought it was just a clever hoax, although I feel clever is a really strong word for this one.
Yeah.
But they
Not
thought
a lot of imagination.
Yeah.
All brain and no heart.
Anyway, they thought it was a hoax nonetheless until
The captured one.
Well, an independent security camera in Yosemite National Park caught the exact same type of entity on film. And this footage was much clearer and showed two of those creatures.
Wow.
One was 7 feet tall and the other was 3 feet tall, and it's believed that one was an adult and one was a child.
Wow.
Now, shortly after those videos went viral, a rumor exploded that Native American tribes in the Central Valley of California had centuries-old oral histories and wood carvings of these exact creatures, and they called them swamp walkers. Yeah. Now, the stories claim that these creatures were peaceful, interdimensional beings that came to Earth to help heal the planet and bridge the gap between humans and nature.
So they were friendly ghosts.
They're friendly guys. Isn't that a lovely story? Well, it turns out it's not at all true.
Oh.
In
well,
fact, anthropologists and tribal historians have pointed out that there never have been record of these carvings or legends in local Native American folklore. It was just an internet myth, which may make this one even scarier because these creatures have no torso. They cannot hold traditional organ systems like we do. They can't have a traditional digestive tract or respiratory system or skeletal structure, which means that they can exist as flesh and blood animals. What are your thoughts on the Nightcrawler?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not buying it either. Do again?
Yeah, you got another one.
Okay. Well, next we have the Jersey Devil.
Ooh, now I've heard the Jersey Devil, but I don't know much about it.
I didn't know a whole lot about the Jersey Devil either. I know it's pretty popular. I never really knew a whole lot. I had heard of it, but I didn't know a whole lot. But I got into some research, and it's actually quite fascinating. Yeah. It's a bit older for sure. Its roots have been traced back to colonial times, although it became a massive modern cryptid phenomenon in the 20th and 21st centuries. This one is a bipedal, horse-headed beast with bat wings, cloven hooves, and a forked tail.
Wow.
So according to legend, a woman called Mother Leeds discovered she was carrying her 13th child in 1735. Okay. Now, she was frustrated and in despair because she was also in grueling poverty and she was overwhelmed that she was having yet another child. So she cursed her unborn baby and she cried out, "Let this one be the devil." Now, one night she went into labor and she gave birth to a perfectly normal looking baby. But moments after birth, the baby began to mutate before Mother Leeds, her family, and the attending midwives. He sprouted bat wings, a horse-like head, cloven hooves, and a long forked tail. He killed the midwives and escaped up the chimney into the dense pine barrens. It sounds pretty ridiculous, doesn't it?
Kind of does.
Well, maybe not. The Leeds family really did exist. They were prominent Quakers in New Jersey. Okay, we've had to cut because, as per usual with Heavy Theology, we either have an issue with our microphones, which are brand new, we have an issue with lighting, we have an issue with something, and this time we had an issue that my research did not print all the way, and that's twice that it's happened, although it's right here. So, all right, so we're going to start with, now Mother Leeds' father-in-law, Daniel Leeds, was a scholar who began publishing an almanac in the late 1600s. And his almanac included astrological symbols, zodiac signs, and mystical writings, which were a huge no-no for the strict Quaker community.
I agree with the Quakers on that one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the community condemned him, and they branded his writings as occultist, heretical, and demonic.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's about right.
So the entire family was labeled as evil as a result. Now, decades later, Daniel's son Titan Leeds took over the family almanac, and he entered a pretty nasty rivalry with the publisher of Poor Richard's Almanac. Do you know who that is?
Can't remember.
It's Ben Franklin.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Ben Franklin was not one to be messed with, so he set out to ruin Titan's business. He used astrology to jokingly predict the exact date of Titan's death. Well,
Benny wasn't the most moral character in the world.
Well, when Titan didn't die and publicly called Ben Franklin a liar, Franklin countered by trying to convince others that Titan had died and that his ghost was just haunting everybody. While funny, it didn't do the Leeds family any good. The name became synonymous with monsters and the demonic. And the legend of the Jersey Devil simmered for over a century until January of 1909, when it was no longer a legend. It became a terrifying, documented reality.
Wow.
Yeah. Between January 16th and January 23rd, 1909, over 100 separate locations across New Jersey and Pennsylvania reported active encounters with the Jersey Devil. Such to the point, now this is how bad it got, okay? Police officers actually shot at it. Schools were shut down because people were terrified of it. Factories closed because the factory workers were too terrified to leave their homes.
Wow.
And get this, unexplained cloven hoof prints were found in the snow, scaling vertical walls and rooftops.
Wow.
Now, witnesses consistently described a bipedal, kangaroo-like body with a horse-like head and horns, large bat wings, and a piercing, blood-curdling scream that sounded like a woman being tortured. All right, so now, what do you think about the Jersey Devil?
Yeah, probably not. I don't know. There's some proof there, though.
I don't know. This one's a little bit more believable than
Yeah.
any of the other ones. I think the best part of the story was Ben Franklin trying to convince everybody that the guy had died.
He was a ghost.
And he
Yeah.
was just a ghost. It was pretty clever. All right, how about some heavy theology?
Heavy theology. Of course, I went to the Bible for mythical creatures.
Well, there you go.
Okay. Now, there are three mythical creatures in the Bible. Three, they call them the triad: Leviathan, Behemoth, and Ziz. And Ziz is not very well known of, but most people have heard of Leviathan or Behemoth. And whether these creatures actually really existed or not is really here nor there as far as to the biblical witness. I believe they did. If they did, then this explains dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Because they are
Nice.
dinosaur-like in their descriptions. of
Nice.
course.
Should we do an episode on dinosaurs?
We could do an episode of dinosaurs.
Oh,
Absolutely.
season 3, guys.
Woohoo.
All right.
So let's start with Leviathan. So in the Bible, Leviathan exists mostly in the book of Job, Job 41. And this is when God is dressing down Job. Gird your loins like a man and prepare yourself for questioning. And he questions him on whether he could conquer Leviathan or not. And God, of course, is the only one that can conquer Leviathan. Well, in the ancient Near East, before, of course, the Israelites came into play, there was always this story of heroism. And the heroes always conquered these mythical creatures, usually a sea creature. And so any god or what have you would have conquered these mythical creatures, and therefore God has his own mythical creatures. I think they actually existed and God did conquer them. Leviathan is also mentioned in Psalm 74. You divided the sea by your might. You broke the heads of the dragons in your waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan. You gave him as food for the creatures of the wilderness. Again, attributing God's greatness to being able to conquer even the great beast Leviathan. Now you got to remember that the ancient Hebrews believed that the earth, the land on the earth, was floating on top of a bunch of water. And there were waters around it. And so in these waters around it, under the earth and outside the land, were chaos dwelt. And this is where Leviathan lived, in chaos. And of course there was the firmament and a layer of water above us as well, but it was like a plate floating on water. So Leviathan, of course, then is representative of ultimate evil in the sea. And this is why Hebrews were afraid of water and afraid of the sea. So when they see Jesus walking on water, or Jesus tell them to go to the sea at night, they're afraid. Leviathan is also mentioned in Isaiah 27, verse 1. On that day the Lord with his cruel and great strong sword will punish Leviathan the fleeing serpent, Leviathan the twisting serpent, and he will kill the dragon that is in the sea. Again, witnessing to this idea of heroism on the last day at the end of time, God will finally conquer these beasts of evil. So Leviathan represents a evil and chaos in the Holy Scriptures. And he's what's known as a chasm cough. Have you heard of chasm cough? Mm-hmm. I've come across it. It's a common ancient theme where the Creator battles something wicked and evil, chaos basically, where chasm cough comes from. And so all ancient Near East myths have this sort of chasm cough. So this chasm cough, the Leviathan lives in the Tehom, which is the area of water underneath the land. Okay? So then we go to Behemoth, the Lord of the land. He's a creature with bones like tubes of bronze, limbs like bars of iron, and a tail that sways like cedar. They say that he eats grass like an ox. He lies hidden under the lotus plants in the marsh and is unfazed when a river rages against his mouth. Interestingly enough, he has this strong structure, but his bones are made of bronze, which is a soft metal. So he actually has an imperfection.
Sure.
He can break easily. In ancient Jewish apocalyptic literature, the outside the Bible, like the book of Enoch and 4th Ezra, the tradition expands that he and Leviathan, of course, like I said before, were created on the 5th day of creation. And the ocean couldn't hold both their massive sizes, so God split them up. He left Leviathan in the ocean, and he set Behemoth on the land or in the dry desert, dry, arid place, where demons dwell, the wicked and evil and so forth, called the Dunedain. He's called the bull of heaven. Behemoth represents the untainable raw power of the earth. The name itself, Behemoth, is actually the plural form of the Hebrew word for beast. So here, the Hebrew word actually means beasts of beasts, or the ultimate land animal. And he's mentioned in Job chapter 40, right before Leviathan. And again, he's used as a challenge to Job: if you're all powerful and all knowing, can you beat Behemoth? Can you beat Leviathan? Then there's Ziz. Ziz is a bird of incomprehensible cosmic scale. Jewish tradition describes it as a creature so massive that when it stands in the deepest part of the ocean, the water only reaches its knees. Oh, wow. That's a big bird.
That's a big bird.
Like Sesame Street.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. And his head touches the sky. Psalm 50:11 reads, I know every bird in the mountains, and the field is mine. But the word there of the fields is actually Ziz. So it actually mentions it in Hebrew, although it doesn't come across in our English translation.
Oh, gotcha.
Same thing in Psalm 80:13. Speaking of a ravaged vineyard, the psalmist writes, the boars from the forest ravage it, and the Ziz of the fields feed on it. But Ziz is actually mentioned in 2 Chronicles 20:16. Tomorrow go down against them. Behold, they will come up by the ascent of Ziz. You will find them at the end of the valley, east of the wilderness to Jerusalem. Then in Revelation 13, we see the fulfillment of this ancient Near East theme that John carried it on into Revelation. At the end of time, in Revelation 13, a multi-headed beast crawls out of the sea. Well, in the Urgadic society, Leviathan was known as a multi-headed sea creature. So this multi-headed sea creature crawls out of the sea, and then he has a partner beast on the land, and this is the beast that corrupts humans and gives them the mark of the beast that you can't buy or sell.
Gotcha.
So the mark of the beast is actually a part of the behemoth tale from the Old Testament, reiterated in the New. And what John is witnessing to here in Revelation 13 is not actually a Antichrist coming to power. It's these two beasts, the representation of chaos and evil, coming to a head in battle with God, and God destroying them, as was foretold of clear back in the Old Testament, that God in the end times would destroy them, and the people of God would feast on them at the feast of the Messiah. So, well, like I said, whether these beasts really existed or not is neither here nor there necessarily to the biblical witness. I do believe they existed, and I do believe that it is a witness to some type of prehistoric or dinosauric type figure, both on water, land, and air. Leviathan, of course, had the great scales and the sharp teeth. And what intrigues me about Leviathan is that he breathed fire. So I'm almost wondering if at one time there actually were fire-breathing dragons.
You're right, right. Wow. So what do you think about, does anything like that exist, or any kind of descendant of that exist?
I don't think it exists today. I think it was probably wiped out in the flood because they were so terribly dangerous, and because, like the Nephilim, they were co-opted or created by the demonic for the destruction of God's people, and they were just too powerful. So I think they all got wiped out in the flood, and I don't think there's any remnants of them left.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Nice, nice.
I don't think Noah took them on the ark.
You don't think that they went 2 by 2?
It would be kind of hard if he stood in the water and the water only reached his knees and his head touched the sky. It'd be kind of hard to fit him in the boat.
I was going to say, I think it'd be kind of hard to wipe out Z's. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, it is not uncommon for ancient Near East mythology or myths like this to exaggerate. So there probably were these beasts, and they probably weren't actually that big. But the
It's
exaggeration
pretty
of their size is a way of that culture. It was okay for that culture to exaggerate. So modern literary critics of the Bible, or higher biblical criticism, would go and say that these were just literary figures because they were exaggerated.
Sure.
But that is taking a modern context of something that a literary person today would use, an exaggeration to show a false being, to communicate a truth. But that's not what the ancient Near East, that's not how they would have handled these things. Their exaggeration was something that really existed, but exaggerated to show the power. So I don't want to buy into biblical criticism or higher criticism in the concept that these things didn't exist, because they no longer exist.
All right, well, you ready for a reality check?
Lay it on me, Chicky.
Okay. I've done some research on what makes people prone to believe in cryptids, and I found some interesting facts. Yeah. We know the brain is an overactive pattern finder, and we learned this from the ESP episode when we learned about pareidoia, where the brain forces vague and random visual stimuli to look for something familiar. And I think this may account for a lot of the eyewitness testimony for a lot of these creatures, except for El Chupacabra, because all it is a coyote with mange. But there's also the desire to find magic or mysticism in the mundane. And our world isn't enchanted, but man, we like to kind of force it to be. So, yeah.
You know, in the 60s and 70s, late 60s, early 70s, that's post-World War II, and the churches are exploding. All the mainline denominational churches are exploding. Everybody has a church. So it's not, do you go to church? It's which church do you go to? It's just part of the culture. But that, and the amount of literature that was produced in that amount of time in my studies that I found about occultism, occultism was really on the rise, Satan worship, and they were really blending occultic type beliefs with Christianity. And so a lot of the, especially in the United Kingdom, in England, a lot of the exorcists were blending local folklore and myth with biblical truth on what is supernatural. And there was a lot of appearances of ghosts. That's when The Exorcist came out, and that's when UFOs were at an all-time high. I mean, about every other episode of The Twilight Zone made in that time has to do with aliens, right? And so I don't know why it was that particular time, other than I think the churches were prospering and Satan was on the prowl. But that's a very, very centralized, supernatural, occultic type time, and so it doesn't surprise me that that's when the Mothman appeared and several other of these creatures.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. You know, there's also the belief that people can have these mass beliefs and mass feelings due to mass hysteria. Basically, they can have these beliefs that something terrible is going to happen, and they will it to happen just because they're all collectively believing that something terrible is going to happen. And that's what I'd like to talk about in next week's episode.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Can people will something into existence or will it to happen?
And I mean, we did touch on that in one of the episodes from this season, the Philip experiment. When
Which
we
was in the
looked
same
at
60s, 70s time frame. I mean,
exactly. So I'd like to kind of dive a little bit more into, can we, as a group, collectively sense that something is going to happen and then make it happen, or sense that it's going to happen and prepare ourselves for it.
Can we manifest it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Good deal. Good episode. A little bit of technical difficulty here and there.
We persevered.
We persevered. It was frustrating, but we persevered for sure. All right. So that's what we'll talk about next week, if that works for you. All right. Well, thank you to Trent and Jackie for allowing us to use their beautiful venue here at Crow Coffee Lounge in Yuma, Colorado. And thank you to Shane over at Hyman Pulpit for his excellent editing abilities. And we'll do it again next week, just a whole lot better.
Absolutely.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.